You are listening to On the Wire, Racing TV's Irish racing podcast.
It's the On the Wire Irish Derby special, and what a special day it is because we only have Angus McNae in the house making his On the Wire debut with Brendan Duke. How are you, Angus?
Johnny, good form. Yeah, good to join you. How are you guys?
I'm good. How are you, Dukey?
Yeah, good form. Looking forward to the weekend. Always a big week in the place.
Yeah, if you think we're just going to talk about selections and tips, well, think again, because we've lots to ruminate over this week, including a suggestion that the race should be changed in terms of distance. And we'll reflect on some of the old glories in the race and what has happened to the Irish Derby, that it has kind of gone down in the pecking order. Because this weekend, the Curragh is back. The Curragh is back with a full crowd, as much as it can fit in. And we've 2 tickets to give away. We've a really, really interesting question for you to do with Aidan O'Brien and his runners in the race, rather, which we'll get to. We'll also hear from his sons, Joseph and Donncha, but it looks like it might be somebody else winning the race this year. Maybe it's going to go up for export. So we've 2 tickets to give away. Do remember to gamble responsibly as ever. And can I also just plug the free 1-month trial of Racing TV for new and returning customers? Details at racingtv.com/free trial. Angus, how was your Royal Ascot?
It was good, Johnny. I didn't go, to be honest. It looked like it was pretty full, and it was a very good crowd there. I didn't go because I can get so much out of it watching it at home. Got everything that I need at home to watch it. And to be honest, wearing one of those suits and a waistcoat in 30-degree heat and travelling on the train did not appeal at all. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was one of the best Royal Ascots I can remember for a long time.
I love Royal Ascot, Dukey. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's my favourite racing festival of the year, and it lived up to expectations as per.
Are you going to Curragh?
Yes, the weather might be really bad tomorrow. That might put me off, but I doubt it. It seems more like heavy showers, so I can live with heavy showers. So my plan is to be there all 3 days.
Beautiful. Okay, let's start and get into the action. We're going to look back here on 3 of the vintage winners of the race, starting with the horse I think we'll all remember who actually passed away last year. And I was talking at an event for the Derby during the week about Galileo. Here he is, Dukey. His legacy lives on. Aidan O'Brien after Galileo is going to be interesting, but do you remember this?
Yes, I do. I would have been, what was that, 2001? So I would have been 24. Yes, in my own salad days. What a horse he was, and that was some golden run for the race, wasn't it? I'm just looking here. You had Monjou, Sindar, Galileo, High Chaparral, and the Lampshire 5 years in a row. We didn't know how good we had it.
We didn't. Angus, here is one of those winners, Sindar, appearing here on the outside. What are your recollections of this?
He was a brilliant horse. Johnny Murtagh was on board, of course, for John Ox, and he was a horse who loved really quick ground. He had a sharp turn of foot, and he was a brilliant winner of the race. From what I remember, the time was pretty quick as well. And he absolutely destroyed a good field just under hands and heels from Johnny. He was a horse I absolutely loved, and he became a good sire as well, with his progeny all wanting decent ground. And he was a big winner for the John Ox team. And he's the sort of horse we want to see in this race.
Yeah, and another horse we'd like to see in this race, you saw the Budweiser sponsorship there, which was quite evident. At that time, the Derby was probably almost at its height. You could get the train there, and it was a big day out. And the other thing, Dukey, you'd have horses coming over from France like Monjou here.
Yes, well, I mean, this is one of the most memorable classics I've ever seen. It's probably in the top 2, along with that filly of Lady Bamford's that Jamie Spencer rode, when you just see a horse travelling all over Group 1 opposition. I mean, it doesn't happen very often. Imperious stuff. So,
Angus, why do we not get the Epsom first and seconds here? We were obviously having the unlucky Epsom fourth, or Epsom third, rather. Westover is really making the race in some respects. Why don't we have the Derby winner coming over anymore unless he's Irish trained?
I don't know why they don't want to go for it. They seem to want to have a little bit of a break after the Derby, and then they seem to all want to go to the King George. That seems to be the route that the English trainers want to go. I don't know why they don't come to Ireland. I don't know why they don't want to come to the Curragh now, because the race is not as strong as it used to be. I think there's no doubt about that. And Derby winners could come here, albeit off a shortish layoff, and they could double up. They could win the Irish Derby. I mean, I think the Epsom Derby winner would come here and bolt up, to be honest, for Sir Michael Stow. I don't think he'd be troubled to win. And the race has gone downhill. I'm just looking at winners. Look at these. I'll just cite some of these to you. 2017 Capri, 2018 Latrobe, 2018 Sovereign. What happened to Sovereign? And then you've got Santiago, and of course you've got Hurricane Lane last year. The jury's out on Hurricane Lane now, but those 4 or 5 winners before him, they're not very memorable, are they?
No, and this gets to Alan Sweetman's column in the Racing Post. We just have the headline here, which I think kind of sums it up in the sense of what the Derby might need to do in terms of getting itself back to the glory of old days. And essentially, Dukey, what Alan Sweetman is advocating here is that the race should revert to 10 furlongs, which is more or less what the French have done. Now, the horses that Angus mentioned there, not only are they by and large pretty forgettable, none of them is a stallion prospect really worth talking about. And I think that's the crux of the race. So you might be a traditionalist, Dukey, you are many things. But would this be the answer in the sense that I think it's the only Group 1 for 3-year-olds over a mile and 2 in Ireland and Britain, full stop, if that were the case. And it would also tug at the commercial heartstrings of potential stallions, because if you're far from guaranteed to be a stallion anymore if you win either Derby, actually. You're just shaking your head.
No, I think he makes some very interesting points. And on balance, I would be inclined to agree with Alan Sweetman, who must be the most unlikely revolutionary since Paddy Hirst, but that's another story. Now, just a few negatives against his argument that I will put up. I saw Angus cherry picking a bit of data there from the Irish Derby, and there have been some very duff renewals. He makes a fair point. But also in the last 10 years, you've had Camelot, Australia, Jack Hobbs, and Hurricane Lane. So there's some proper horses in there as well. The other maybe argument against it is it would detract from the Eclipse, but the Eclipse this year looks like being an exception, but generally is a vehicle for older horses. And the other argument against it is, I suppose, that the way the Japanese are taking over global racing at the moment, and a lot of their breeding emphasizes stamina, and they get speed from stamina as opposed to the other way around. So I can see those as the negatives, but on balance, I think I'm in favour of the Sweetman's argument. And the reasons for it are this. Well, the major reason is, what ultimately swings it for me, is that you would have say, I know it doesn't happen very often, but say you had Camelot in 2012 and Australia in 2014. So Camelot won the Guineas and the Derby, and Australia nearly won the Guineas and did win the Derby. So you would have a de facto Triple Crown. Over an 8-week period, you would have 3 classics over 3 different trips, and if a horse could win all 3, you mentioned the commercial imperatives, I'd imagine the mares would be queuing up around the back of the barn to get to that stallion. So I think it would make the race more attractive in terms of the Derby winner saying, okay, we can do what is now accepted, because really the Ledger being part of a Triple Crown is an anachronism. So we have in the public consciousness that Derby is the third leg of this 8-week Triple Crown. And if you have a horse that do this, the world's your oyster. I also think, just in terms of the horses you might attract, like if the Irish Derby was over 10 furlongs, would we have Native Trail running here? Would we have Vidani running here? Quite possibly. You might see a situation where maybe a filly didn't quite stay the trip in Epsom and they're not sure about the quick turnaround for the DM, so you might get a filly coming here as well. So I think it does open up the races to more potential contenders. And I think on balance, the traditionalist in me is looking at myself, appalled at myself, but still on balance, we have to move with the times. I feel like I'm leaning towards the Sweetman's argument.
Angus, I think Dukey spoke brilliantly there. I didn't even necessarily think of the Triple Crown argument. The Irish Derby initially was, I think, a 1.6 mile race. So tradition is tradition, but tradition, you can't be bogged down by it as well. And that point, Angus, about the old school Triple Crown, which has become an utter anachronism, this actually could be, and you would have Guineas horses stepping up in trip and winning over a 1.2 miles versus winning over a mile. Doesn't really hurt your commercial kind of potential if you're winning the Irish Derby, this new Irish Derby.
Not at all. You get 2,000 Guineas winner taking on the Derby winner. As far as the current Triple Crown's concerned, isn't the Ledger just far too far away from the other legs? You know, everyone's completely forgotten about it by the time we get to the Ledger at Doncaster. It doesn't mean much. Not many horses go for it anyway. So it does need a revamp, and this would be a really good way of doing it. And I think it would attract the best of the best to take each other on. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, and in fairness to Alan as well, I think Richie Forrester might be off, so he's writing a couple of columns on this. I think he might have a follow-up next week. But I feel at the Curragh tomorrow, Juki, this will be part of the debate because, with all due respect to the Curragh is an amazing racetrack. It's exceptionally fair. It's completely different to Epsom. But you can offer, the winners of these races everything. It just doesn't mean they're going to come anymore. And I don't really know what the Curragh can do about it. I mean, if you're looking back at Fame and Glory's win in the Irish Derby, for me that was almost the nadir, because that race was basically a batting race for Fame and Glory, if I remember rightly. And it was kind of like this is almost like a gallop at home in Ballydoyle. I mean, and the betting on the race didn't make any sense because whatever the horse that Richard Hughes rode at Epsom, who was on the Derby run, had a big chance. It wasn't a beam for him. And you could tell in the morning the way the betting was. Fame and Glory, this race, Sea the Stars isn't here. This is going to be set up for Fame and Glory. But at least that was a better renewal than some of the ones we've had recently. That's to you, Jude.
That's to me, yeah. And I mean, I was mentioning Camelot earlier, but again, Camelot was like a racecourse gallop. It was effectively just to go and pay homage to the horse. He was 5s on or something. So yeah, just in terms of competition. And I didn't even mention earlier, I probably should have mentioned, it would have made it more likely, or sorry, if the race was over 10 furlongs, it would make it more likely that the French and Derby winners clash, which used to be a thing for this race and was a big deal. So that's another little argument for dropping the race to 10 furlongs.
It's probably my favourite trip in racing, the Mile and Two, because the Champion Stakes has been such an amazing race. And just lastly on this, Angus, like you wanted Royal Ascot and so on and so forth, but watching from home, what difference did the global element make to it? I thought it was phenomenally better for the Aussies, the US horses, the Japanese horses, not to mind the French.
Yeah, I wanted to make that point, Johnny, because I think the Irish Derby was definitely at its best when it attracted raiders from overseas. I think there's no doubt about that. From the UK and elsewhere, we saw Monjou from France. When it attracts other horses, it really adds a lot of spice to it. And if it's going to revive in its current form at 1.5 miles, they've got to work harder to get international competition, and then that will give it a shot in the arm. Aidan O'Brien's dominated it, hasn't he, over the last 10, 15 years or so, and maybe trainers are scared of that O'Brien domination, but they've got to try and encourage more international competition, and that would revive it somewhat.
And Angus brings me beautifully onto our question. And these are 2 tickets to give away for the Derby. So there has been a bit of chat about the price of getting in. I think it's a little bit over the top, to be honest. I mean, it is the Irish Derby. What sort of crowd will get it be interesting? But you and somebody you can bring along could be among them. Send your answer to onthewire@racingtv.com. Now, this answer, I actually don't know the answer. I don't have the time to look this up at the moment. When was the last time Aidan O'Brien did not run a colt in the Irish Derby? When was the last time? Because before like Tuesday was supplemented, Juki, I was like, the bookies had, I think they had Aidan's horse second in the betting, was well beaten at Epsom, and I was like, his colts simply aren't good enough. I mean, before I was with Racing TV before the Epsom Derby and the Ballydoyle morning, and he basically said Luxembourg was his best Derby horse comfortably. He wasn't there.
Yeah. Absolutely, and clearly they agree with you, and that's why they're running the filly here, because they're a breeding operation. So it's probably anathema to them to run a filly in what is effectively a Colts Classic, but they want to win the race, and she gives them the best chance of winning the race.
Yeah, it's very much outlier stuff. Fillies don't tend to run in the Irish Derby, which would make sense. But again, if Juki and Alan Sweetman's Mile and Two race, maybe fillies would run it, that it might suit them more to run over Mile and Two than in the Irish Oaks, which would stay at its 1.5 miles. You heard it here first. Well, second, actually. You heard it here first, Irish Racing Authority. Let's get to the form, right? We'll start with you, Juki, on this one. I didn't fancy Tuesday, I have to say, in the Oaks. She produced this performance. There's no doubt she was. I think there's little doubt, anyway, that she was a little bit fortunate. But she is a horse who has extremely good, in the context of this, really good mile form. So if you watch her win in the Oaks here, the fact that she could last it out on the far side against a horse who's paid to be unlucky, but this was still a hell of a performance, and she's totally unexposed over the 1.5 miles.
Totally unexposed over the 1.5 miles, and as you mentioned, that Emily Upjohn is a proper horse. They were well clear the third, who's since gone on and won the French Oaks. This race could set up really well for Tuesday, because I cannot find much pace in the race. Maybe French Claim, but it could be a complete dawdle, in which case her turn of foot will be quite the weapon. And Westover is a horse who can take a real grip, so it could be a problem for them. So yeah, I can totally see the argument for Tuesday, and I thought she should be clear favourite.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. Let's look at the Derby now. Angus, you can talk over this. There's so much to talk about here. Did Hornby lose the ride in this incident we're about to see? How will Colin Keane get on with the horse? How will he get on with the Curragh himself, for a horse who kind of tends to drift left under pressure? Dukey said he's free, but like, he was drawn 2 in the Derby. It was his first go at 1.5 miles. I think he stayed the trip perfectly well. So we see him obviously in the Cala Abdullah colours here. A lot is about to go wrong, Angus.
Yeah, he gets short of room. If you have a close look at this, though, there was a moment when there was a gap there for him. And I think he lacks a bit of tactical pace, to be honest. He couldn't take the gap when it appeared for him. And then it closed, and then Hornby had to switch around. And yes, he stayed on really well. And, he should have been a good second. I don't think some people think he'd have won the race if he hadn't got hampered. But I'm not having that, because I think the winner's an exceptional racehorse. I think he's very good indeed. I just think he lacks a little bit of tactical pace. Plus, he can be keen, and I'd be quite keen to get him, to be honest. I'm a bit of a fan of Tuesday. I think that Oaks is, to me, a little bit underrated. It was a steadily run Oaks. The first and second were in bad positions, although Ryan went round the inside. Frankie was forced wide because he'd missed the break, etc. And they came from the back of the field in what was quite a steadily run race. And they were miles better than the rest for me. And I just think she deserved more credit for what she did there. And it might turn out that Emily Upjohn is a very good horse. So if I had to compare Westover to Tuesday, I would definitely prefer Tuesday. I think if you look at Westover's form before he went to the Derby, yeah, it was okay. He won at Sandown. He scrambled home at Sandown somewhat. And his Epsom run is clearly his best. It's his first run at 1.5 miles. But I don't know. I just think he lacks a little bit of tactical pace, and he might not be necessarily straightforward. As far as the jockey's concerned, this is top class sport. I don't sort of get sentimental about this sort of thing. This is top class sport. This is a big Group 1. It's the Irish Derby, and I have no problem with them swapping Rob Hornby for Colin Keane at all.
I don't either, Dukey. The only thing that could come back to bite this scenario, and it probably won't, Colin Keane doesn't get that many classic rides relative to his talents, because the Lions operation only until recently, struggled. Gerard Lyon's an amazing trainer, but he doesn't have the resources to have classic horses because he's obviously not training. So, we had Colin winning the Oaks, and he has a couple of good rides for Aidan O'Brien. He doesn't get that many rides. I don't know how many Derby rides he's had. The only thing that could bite him in the proverbial backside here, Dukey, the fact that this horse is not straightforward. Colin Keane hasn't ridden him.
True. Yeah. No, I still agree with Angus's point. I think having Colin Keane on the horse gives him a better chance than having Rob Hornby on him. And I'd be very much. I don't know. There's always this narrative around. It's the same thing when people say, "Oh, they've put up a 7-pound claimer, so that negates the rise in the weights." Well, it doesn't. Because that assumes that all jockeys are the same. And these people say, "Oh, leave poor Rob Hornby on the horse." Well, sure, all the jockeys are the same, but they're not. I know it's marginal difference. I don't think the jockey actually makes a massive difference generally. I think it's exaggerated. But this is, as Angus said, top-class sport. And this is why I watch top-class sport. There's so much grey areas in life. It's all this, "Oh, well, you could have said this, you could have said this. Who can say what the truth is?" The reason we watch sport is because there's a winning line. And I want to be with the people who run over their own mothers to get to that winning line first. So there's no room for sentiment in this game. The horse is a little bit tricky. I take your point, but I still think Colin Keane gives him the best chance to win. And if I was backing him, I'd be happy to see him in the plate.
Yeah, I don't like this when people say, "Well, look, Frankie Dettori, Ryan Moore, well, they've never sat on this horse before. Isn't that a negative?" Well, of course it's not a negative. They've ridden thousands of horses. They know what they're doing. They're world-class jockeys. And Colin Keane, I would include in that. They know exactly what they're doing. And even if Westover is a bit awkward, even if he is a bit keen, he'll still get a better ride from Colin Keane.
And it's all in the game, Colin Keane lost the ride on Tarnawa in the Arc, and you just that's the way it goes. They went with Sumi on. They thought he was a better option. Fine.
That's
doesn't
it.
ride for Dermot well anymore, which is a fairly baffling state of affairs, not to do with Colin. But I hope you're intrigued by this debate. I think one aspect for Colin is this horse has you see Monju winning the Irish Derby there. One of the beauties of racing it, unlike other sports, is that it just comes from generation to generation. Yet the same thing has happened. The Monju horse is so tricky. Frankel horses are tricky as well. You saw Monju drifting all over the Curragh there into the rail. Colin Keane will have the other problem because Westover can be quite badly left. You saw it at Epsom as well. He lugged into the left. So at the Curragh, that offers a different challenge when they generally tend to end up over the far side. But we'll see what happens. Let's look at another contender. We will later on hear from Donica and Joseph O'Brien very quickly on their two runners. But here's Joseph's runner, Hannibal Barca, ex-Brian Meehan, whose form ties in with Luxembourg last season. Dukey, this is a lovely performance. By all accounts, he was quite fat. I don't know if you were racing that day.
Yes, I was. Well, he struck me as a deep girth horse, so it can be very hard to tell with them. He's not over big, but he's strong behind and he's strong in the girth. And this was quite a taking performance in an admittedly ordinary race.
So before we get to our 1, 2, 3 in the Derby, let's hear from Donica O'Brien on Pisbadil and Joseph O'Brien on the horse we've just seen.
Pisbadil's in good form. Everything's gone smooth since Epsom. We think the track will suit him a bit better, so we're hoping for a good run.
Looking forward to the weekend. Hannibal Barr says in good nick. He's trained well from his good win last time at the Curragh. His prep has gone smoothly. It looks a very competitive race, and it should be a great race, and we're looking forward to taking part in it. We're hoping he can run very well.
So I don't know if you're reading into this, Yuki, and obviously Aidan and Donica, they're good media performers. Donica's hoping for a good run. Joseph's hoping for a very good run. So maybe the Hannibal. I can't have Pisbadil. I don't know what you make of his chance.
Well, to err is equine, to forgive divine, Johnny. I backed him for the Derby, and obviously after the race, the Tory said didn't handle the track. I mean, that's what every horse who disappointed in the Derby ever. That's what the jockey says. So maybe I've just totally overrated the horse, but I just cannot believe that was his run, and he's going to be a double-figure price tomorrow. I'll give him one more chance. I do think he's a really good horse, and I don't think we saw the best of him in Epsom.
Let's go with the 1, 2, 3. And as you give your 1, 2, 3 here, Dukey, you can give some sort of a clairvoyance in terms of how this race is going to pan out tactically as well to inform your 1, 2, 3.
Well, I don't know. I don't know is the answer. I mean, I'm leaning towards French Claim making the pace, but that's far from certain. Someone might show some initiative. I'd actually like to see Pisbadil making the run. I think he's a very straightforward horse and his stamina is guaranteed. But I'm guessing in terms of how the race will pan out tactically, my hunch is it'll turn into a bit of a sprint. And still, despite that, because of the price, I am going to go with Pisbadil to win. Tuesday to be second. I'm very much afraid of her because of her turn of foot, which could be a potent asset in this race, and Westover to be third.
So yeah, it's been quite warm in Dublin in relative terms. We do have rain forecasts in general until Saturday. I'm not sure what's going to happen. The more I think, the better for Westover. Angus, I'm not sure if the ground's going to change that much anyway. But what is your 1, 2, 3 and why?
Johnny, I've got the same 3 horses, but in a different order. I think Tuesday's going to win. I was really impressed with what she did in the Oaks. I think she's better than the Bear result, as was the runner-up. No doubt about that. So I think she'll utilise her turn of foot, and I think she'll see off Westover. I just think this horse he'll just not hit a flat spot. I don't like that flat spot talk, but I think he'll get outpaced at some point. I think he's a thorough stayer. I think he'll get outpaced and then run on again. I'm sure that's what happened in the Derby, and I'm not going overboard about him being hampered in the Derby. And I do like Pisbadil for third place here. I know jockeys always say they don't handle the track when they run badly in the Derby, but I thought it was one of Frankie's sort of negative rides really on him. He sort of was happy to sit 3 or 4 wide, and he didn't do a right lot in the straight. He let the horse hung to his left, and he didn't seem very proactive in getting hold of the horse and straightening him up, and it just seemed a negative sort of ride from Frankie. So I think he's better than the Bear result. That Ballysax was a really good effort. I think he'll stay 1.5 miles. So I've got him in third. I nearly put him second. I nearly had him beaten Westover as well because I'm against Westover, but it's Tuesday for me. I think she'll take a lot of beating.
Check out the website for Angus's tips. He's a terrific strike rate, unlike Frankie at Royal Ascot. I just got to mention that, Angus, because the Gold Cup, I thought, I mean, whatever about Frankie, I just thought the whole race itself, Ryan Moore had to resort to probably a plan C or D. And when we're talking about the Guineas here, I really don't know how this is going to pan out tactically. There's so many aspects of the race. Who's going to ride? Who's going to go for home first? But isn't that the beauty of these high-class races where, you know, Ryan Moore admits, like his horse in the Gold Cup, for example, he misses the break and then he has to go wide. Then he hems in Frankie, so much going on.
Yeah, that is the beauty of it. It can get messy, can't it, when you don't have much pace. Just on the Frankie thing, just one point that's not been made very often. I don't think he's riding enough. I don't think he's getting enough match practice. So I had a look today. He's had 88 rides in this year since January, since the 1st of January, just 88 rides. That's not very many. And I think he's cherry picking which horses he wants to ride. But however good you are and however much you've got in the bank from past glories, you've got to be sharp, haven't you? You've got to be match fit and sharp. And I think he just needs to ride a bit more.
Plenty of past glories on this podcast. Speaking of which, I'm going to give my 1, 2, 3 for the Derby. I was on a panel the other night with like 3 of the greats: Kevin Manning, John Murtagh, and Michael Kinane, and the presenter John Duggan. Nobody went for Westover. This horse was really, really eye-catching in the Derby. It was his first start. He's a Frankel, and bear in mind, Frankel is going to be the stallion sensation of the future. So if you're by Frankel, it's better off being by Frankel than being by Zoffany, which is Hannibal Barca. Frankel horses can be tricky, but they're incredibly talented. He's totally unexposed a mile and a half. The race at Epsom, a lot went wrong for him. He was badly drawn. He had to get into a reasonable position. Obviously got desperate with bad luck in run and was travelling pretty much as well as the winner at the time. Wouldn't have beaten the winner, I agree with Angus, but would have finished clear second and had a potent turn of foot for a horse who's slow. His closing sectionals are better than Tuesday's. That has to be seen in the context of Tuesday going for home and maybe tying up a little bit. This horse does have a turn of foot. Colin Keane is a super rider, probably rides the Curragh as well as anyone else. Tactically, I'm not exactly sure what he's going to do here. I don't think he's going to be miles off the pace. Will he track Tuesday? Will Tuesday track Westover? Because they're dominating the market. One of them has a turn of foot. One of them is probably even a 1.6 mile horse. Can't wait for the race. Hopefully we have a bit of rain. And my third is Hannibal Barca, who I think will stay the trip and run very well. Just briefly on the race, Dukey, it's a race that has, as we mentioned, it's fallen on somewhat hard times. This race does have a lot going for it, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the effective Derby second, he would have been a clear second in the Derby, taking on the Oaks winner, who I suppose is the effective Oaks second. So yeah, it's a really good clash. So I mean, competition is the quintessence of sport, and we have a good contest on our hands here.
And if you, as I mentioned, get on that email to win 2 tickets. They're not cheap, so you can win 2 free tickets for the Curragh. The Curragh, beautiful racetrack, hasn't had many chances to showcase itself with a big crowd on Derby Day, which is will on Saturday. This is arguably the most exciting part of the show, where we have the other bets of the card, and we only have a little bit of VT here because Angus likes this one so much for Paddy Toomey, Angus.
Yeah, 4:20 at the Curragh Saturday afternoon, Johnny. 1.25 mile international stakes. It's a Group 3. This is Rumbles of Thunder, winning last time up at Gowran Park, winning by 3 lengths. It was a listed race that she won, and Colin Keane was on board. It was her second start for Paddy Toomey, who's a tremendous trainer. He's got a 37% strike rate this season, and he's gone too much under the radar, really. He clearly places his horses really well. And I like the way she did that. She was hampered turning for home. She had to switch wide, and she quickened up well. Colin never touched her with the whip. She's won with something in hand in a fast time, and she's ready for a step up into Patton Company, into this Group 3. And being only her third start for Paddy Toomey, there might be a bit more improvement to come. So I really like her.
That's beautiful. And as I mentioned, yeah, check out the website for Angus's tips, which will include Saturday. Dukey, what do you like in the rest of the card?
Well, I was struggling with the rest of the card. I fancied a couple of horses on Friday. If you want them, I'll give you them after. If I was going to have one bet, and I wouldn't be as sweet on him as Angus is on Rumbles of Thunder, but this Vega Magnifico is really taken with him and Navan, routed the opposition in a maiden, took a massive step forward there. The form has been advertised since, albeit in maiden and handicap company, and the horse will obviously need to take another leap forward here. But I thought at around 8 or 10 to 1, it wasn't impossible.
Yeah, you can get my selections. I'll have a bit more time to go through the cards over the next day or two. I can't wait for the race of the weekend. I'm going to go with Affable, though, in the 7 furlong handicap. Ken Condon's horses are in good nick. Adam Potts, my friend, actually procured this horse. She's been a really good stick. She was a bit disappointed at Goran last time. I'm of the mind, like Juki, though, I am the forgiving type, particularly about Goran. I think it's a track where a lot of horses struggle. Likes the Curragh. She won't mind what the ground is like. She's in very good nick, low weight. I think the key to this race is the fact that there's going to be a gallop on, because she will 100% be held up. That's the Premier Handicap at 2 o'clock. Creeps in at the bottom of the weights, and has a very good chance. And just gate to wire, we have horses who ran a Royal Ascot, obviously, some of the 2-year-olds running again, and it's going to be a fascinating card. And in fairness, Angus, it's I think the backup for the card does back up the race itself.
Yeah, it certainly does. Yeah, if you look at the card in its entirety, it's a classy card. There's plenty of runners as well, which is a good thing. Unlike Newmarket on Saturday, when they've got hardly any spread through their card. So there's enough runners to make it very interesting. And I just hope that plenty of people go to the Curragh, Johnny. I hope lots of people turn up, and that there's a fantastic atmosphere. That's what racing needs. And I've had the pleasure of going to the Curragh just once in my life, and I had a fantastic time there. And I hope people go, despite, I know the cost of going, which might be prohibitive, but I do hope there's a good atmosphere there, because the racing's tremendous.
Yeah, you've Age of Kings, Blackbeard, and Crispy Cat, who ran in that amazing Norfolk, obviously, running the railway six. So 3 horses of the 6 ran a Royal Ascot. I mean, you could obviously make a case for all 3 of them, not to mind Shartash, whose trainer John Murta has some nice runners this weekend. Just, Juki, you have a couple for the Friday as well.
Couple for the Friday. So the 7:18, the Apprentice Derby, Joseph O'Brien is channeling his inner Sir Mark Prescott with this common practice, who's an unexposed sort. The form of his Stole comeback fourth has been well advertised since, and he missed the break that day, stepping up no less than 5 furlongs in trip. Now, not guaranteed on pedigree, but if Joseph is in unbelievable form, he's a proper operator as a trainer, and if he thinks this horse is going to improve for the step up to 1.5 miles, he could well have a stone in hand. The boy Dylan Brown McMonigal in the plate as well. Not all apprentices are created equal, Johnny. And I will also stick with Joseph in the 8:28. This Monty's Way, always a horse I liked, quite a very taking specimen he is too. Again, unexposed, really impressive on comeback in Killarney. And I think he can defy the handicapper, particularly if the forecast rain arrives.
Finally, will you be bringing anyone to the Derby? I was actually swimming in Sea Point, thinking of your lovely self last night.
Well, I wasn't swimming yesterday because I was in Naas, but did you notice that it's got to that stage now of the year where you swim into a bit and it's like it's almost tepid, and then you swim a little bit more and it's cold. It's the water where I'm getting a massive payoff for the shivering I did in April. The water is just glorious at the moment. No, I invited I think I can say my girlfriend. I think I'm doing a line at the moment. It's been a couple of months. I invited her to the Derby, but she's having terrible trouble picking out a frock for a wedding on Sunday, and she didn't want the dilemma of picking out a frock for the Curragh on Saturday. So myself and the brother will be going, and I'm driving him down. I don't like to drive, but it's a special occasion, so I'm going to drive down on Saturday.
Frock, proper and anachronistic language to finish off the show. It's been great having you on, Angus.
Yeah, enjoyed it very much. Yeah, I'll be doing the studio on Saturday, Racing TV. So looking forward to that.
No doubt, plugging on the wire to the nth degree. We do remember to gamble responsibly if you're betting on the Curragh or any races this weekend. Thanks a million for watching and listening. Enjoy the Derby. It's going to be an absolute cracker. And do get in your offer to win the 2 tickets.
You are listening to On the Wire, Racing TV's Irish racing podcast.